It's been wonderful to meet everybody, and I hope we can recreate history. So before we begin, let me start sharing my screen. And if at any point you feel that the video is very choppy, just let me know. I can turn off my video and then we can focus on the presentation and I can come back on camera. Um, but yeah, as Dr. Tim said, thank you so much for the introduction. I have been um, a BA for a while, but before I was a BA, I was also in the development space. I worked as a database architect as well. So I've dribbled in a few different types of roles apart from, the introduction that he gave, but I do have to say a lot of my skill sets when it comes to dealing with people, building relationships, gathering requirements, building a lot of the products that I'm working on today. I do have to credit my BA skills quite a bit because that gave me the foundational expertise to be a better professional in general. And I think if between human skills and technical skills, I always feel that the human skills are much, much more harder to gain. They're much more harder to finesse and grow better into. So the more opportunities you get in terms of meeting people, working with people, grab the opportunity and try to give your best. Um, and I also wanted to highlight the fact that I've been a mentor and a public speaker for a while. And one of the reasons I do this is also rooted in my BA background, is because BAs are always called upon to, not necessarily teach in its strictest sense, but we do become a subject matter expert over time because we're gathering so much information about the system, we're gathering so much information about the product, we're about the project, even about people. I've had folks come up to me and ask, hey, what does it feel like to work with this stakeholder? What does it mean to work with this stakeholder? What does it mean to work in this department? What does it feel to work in this environment? How was this project? Did the project go smoothly, or were there a lot of hiccups? So eventually you become sort of a pseudo mentor kind of personality, whereby you're telling people about how things are, you're giving them tips on how to do better. So that naturally progressed into a mentorship type of conversation. And last but not the least, public speaking. People think that public speaking just means that you are talking in front of an audience. There are more people out there than who are sharing with you on stage. But I want to remind people that anytime you open your mouth and there's a second person there to listen to you, it is an opportunity to speak publicly because you are voicing your thoughts, you are trying to explain something, you're trying to communicate. So public speaking is um, an unavoidable skill that everybody needs to have. Yes, perhaps the number of people who are listening to you may be different, but I think public speaking is a skill that everybody needs to have. Whether you have one-on-one conversations, it's still a skill. Whether you're negotiating, it's still a skill. Whether you are trying to convince someone to accept something, that's still a skill. So all of these, I think, culminate into that concept of public speaking. But apart from that, I've also done a lot of public speaking in the traditional sense. I've been to a few tech conferences. I recently started emceeing some fun shows as well. So it's all culminating into that skill set. Now, moving on to the key takeaways, I like to run my presentations a little bit like Star Wars Yoda, where he kind of starts with the ending first and then he goes back to the beginning, simply because I feel like you should be hooked onto the presentation because of the journey that you're taking with me, not because of the final outcome. So I'm giving you the outcome. So even if you miss the presentation, you know where we're going to go. Or this also helps you anchor your thought process in the sense that these are the three main things that we're going to cover. So everything else that I'm going to talk to you about today is kind of going to shape itself around these three principles or these three takeaways. So the first thing is self-awareness. It never goes out of fashion, and I'll tell you why. Thinking out of the box is more common than you think. People think that only unique people or some sort of creative people are doing thinking out of the box, but that's not true. And people are your biggest asset. And I think that is something that will be obvious to you because I've been talking so much about people skills. I've been talking so much about human skills. So I think that's somewhat self-explanatory, but I want to go through a few points as to why that's important when you're growing your career as well. So moving into, the word career itself, a lot of people have different definitions. Um, and And the definitions can vary for you as you go through your life. Things will change, but these are some common concepts that people can anchor themselves to when they think about their career. So the first thing is that it has a concept of longevity, in the sense that there is something in there for you in the long term. It is not something that's short term. It's not like a summer job. It's not necessarily a one-time task that you complete for the sake of gaining money, for the sake of, doing something very monetary and very a short-term value that you're trying to gain. Longevity is something that goes over a period of time, and you can kind of attune and attach yourself to different points in that whole journey. The second piece is growth and development. This goes without saying that regardless of what you're doing, I think growth and development is something that you would see in temporary summer jobs as well, because you've got opportunities to gain skills through those roles too. So growth and development should happen at all points in time. It doesn't mean that you're comparing yourself with someone else, but you need to be a better person of yourself compared to who you were yesterday. So even if you have, added one additional skill set to your bag of skills, then you've actually grown. You've developed something further. If there was a failure yesterday and today you went through why you failed and you try to identify what happened that broke the whole chain, that is still a part of your growth and development. So big piece of that is part of your career. Purpose and commitment, these two go hand in hand. There's something at the end of the day that you're working towards. There's something that keeps you alive and happy at your job. There's something that you're looking forward to, whether you are a BA, a developer, a tester, whatever that may be. There's some aspect of the job where that defines your purpose, and saying that, hey, this is something that I enjoy and this is something that I want to keep doing. And tied to that, hand in hand, goes commitment. You need to be committed to doing that, because if you don't feel committed to your job, you're obviously not going to be putting in as much effort in trying to make yourself better. You're not going to take in as much interest in keeping this job going. You might be looking for other things. You might be moving to greener pastures, and that's fine. But the career aspect in itself has some level of commitment in there. With that purpose commitment, there's also the aspect of you getting to know a lot of people in your space. When you like something, when you're committed to doing something, you tend to seek out other people who have similar mindsets such as yourselves, or you want to meet other people who have been on the same journey as yourself. So you want to know how they achieved something, how they did something. So all that, culminates into that networking aspect. And we'll talk a little bit more about networking in the human element as well. And together with that network, you're able to create impact. So, organizations and places such as IIBA, South Africa IIBA, they are creating an impact in the community by bringing like-minded individuals, specifically business analysts, in trying to make a change in the community. You're trying to impact other professionals. You're trying to help newcomers into the industry. You're creating an impact together because all of you have a common vision. You all have a common purpose in terms of what you're trying to do, as opposed to something that would be a job, which and where you would just be gaining those skills to perform the tasks related to that job, but it doesn't necessarily culminate into something that's much longer, or it doesn't lead to something that's a bit more long standing, or something that you would remember for over the course of a few years. I still remember my few summer jobs, but I can't necessarily say that I created any impact with those jobs. And last but not the least, work-life intersection. You must have heard about work-life balance. Everyone talks about that, especially in extremely demanding jobs. You want to make sure that there's time for family, there's time for work. I believe more in work-life compromise, because you cannot expect that your life is going to be 50%, 50% every day. But there will be certain points. For example, last night I actually had a client implementation, which meant that I was online at 9 p.m. my time. And that's usually my family time. But as of yesterday, I was probably tipping the scales towards career a bit more than personal life. But on the whole, you should be able to enjoy your work life compromise in a way that it lends itself to the most important piece at that point in time. So setting your priorities. And when it comes to career, there's going to be a work-life intersection. And the reason I use that word is because there's a certain aspect of your personality and your personal life that will lend in itself to the career that you choose. Now, I actually enjoy working on solutions. I actually enjoy solving problems. I enjoy providing my point of view and my perspective to people. And all that has actually helped me become a better mentor. So, as a personality, because I have that drive in me, because I have that thirst for knowledge, I'm constantly curious, and I'm able to use that curiosity into my BA space as well because it helps me ask better questions. Whereas in a job, I don't want to take a very, very dark kind of career here, but you may come across all these movies where they talk about hitmen and assassins, right? When they are at their job, they're cutthroat and they do all this stuff. And then the camera pans to their personal life, and suddenly they are the most doting and loving dads. For example, if we see the movie Taken with Liam Neeson, that he's just like chopping people to get to his daughter, but then he also has this family side. So the assassin career or the hitman career is not necessarily a career, but they take jobs because they can separate their own personality from who they are as a person. So to give a more fun distinction of what that means, where you don't see the work life intersection, but I cannot necessarily disassociate myself from all the BA skills that I've learned. I actually find that a lot of skills I learned at work, I still apply in my personal life to network and talk to people and gain more stakeholder understanding and relationship building and so on and so forth. So that's the underlying distinction between a career and a job, I think. And hopefully this is something that you are tuning yourself to as well, whereby you're not necessarily thinking of the next job that comes up as a one-time thing, but something that is going to add to your overall career as a BA. Now, the first thing is self-awareness. I think the term itself is quite self-explanatory in terms of saying that I need to know who I am. I need to know who I am as a person, what I like, what I don't like, and it seems to be a very obvious thing to do in the sense that, oh, of course I need to know about myself. I obviously like being a BA. That's why I'm going down this path. But have you delved into much more deeper, especially for people who are just starting their career? I always tell my mentees that um, knowing about yourself is a never ending journey, because at every stage I myself felt that 10 years ago I was a different person compared to who I am today. What kind of person I was when I started my career is completely different from who I am today. And the few years that I had in university, very different person from who I am today. So you have to constantly have that touch point with yourself in trying to understand, I worked on this project, I thoroughly enjoyed it. What is it that made me enjoy this project? Did I like it? Did I not like it? Are those aspects connected to the BA role in itself? If they are not, they might be something else. It doesn't mean that you cannot be a BA anymore, and we'll cover that as well in the next slide. But knowing what those qualities are. People talk about, I want to be in a dream job. I want to be in my dream job. But is someone going to advertise for you saying that, hey, this is Banu's dream job? No one's going to advertise that. You need to detect and you need to search for that dream job. And the only way you're going to know that is by knowing what kind of dreams you have. What kind of things do you like? What is your learning style? What is your environment that you like? Are you more of a fast-paced person? Are you more of a more stable, settled type of person? Do you like working with constant changes? Do you like more well-researched, thought-out changes that need to go in? What is your personality, and where are you coming from? Those are things that you need to answer for yourself. No one else is going to do that for you. You can also take the path of coaching and talking to a mentor to kind of assess a little bit of what is a third person's view on yourself? How do I come across to other people? That is also an important piece to have. So all these things are things that you need to do to be constantly self-aware of who you are as a BA. Do you fit into the template? Now, IIBA has published BABOK, which is super useful in terms of understanding what kind of skills you need to have to be successful in that role. But to have those skills, you also need to have a certain set of personality. So all these things are kind of tied together, and the more you dive into it, the more you try to understand yourself, the better you would be as a BA, because you start hacking away at all the not so useful parts, and you start filtering towards things that are more useful and will help you get to that peak of being the best BA that you ever can be, right? Um, being constantly curious about yourself and others. People often think that self awareness just means knowing about yourself. And going back to the point that I just made a few minutes ago, talk to other people to see how you come across to other people. There's a concept that I learned when I was younger. It was called the Johari window. And Johar is, I believe it comes from a place in Malaysia. I could be wrong, but Johor Bahru is a place in Malaysia. And I think this comes from that word, Johari window. And basically, what it used to say is there are four quadrants for any person. One is what you know about yourself and no one else knows about. What you know about yourself, but others do know. What you don't know about yourself, but others know, and what you don't know, and what others don't know. So that's the area, that's the untapped potential that you haven't discovered. But you want to minimize the spot where others know a lot more about you and you don't know much about it, because that means that you might be doing a lot of unconscious behaviors that others are picking on, but you haven't really noticed that you are doing it. So you want to minimize that part. And by being curious about other people, you will know a lot more about yourself too. So if someone comes in and says to you, say, I don't really like getting last minute requests like these, right? So they are, in effect, communicating about themselves and saying that they don't like last minute requests. But it's also a signal to you to say that, hey, maybe I have not been communicating the deadlines and the timeline to this person as efficiently as I should. Are other stakeholders feeling the same way? Maybe I should look into how often I'm managing my time, how often I am communicating timelines. What is the communication style that this person requires? Do I need to make an improvement on that? And how I can improve myself to make sure that I'm communicating in the right way, right? So every piece of communication that comes to you, you are able to glean two different sides of the coin there. So by being constantly curious about other people, you're also being constantly curious about yourself. Try out different things. So this was the part of the window that I was telling you, where you don't know any whether you have that skill and other people don't know about it either. That's your untapped potential area. And the more you try out new things, the more curious you are to go try out new technologies, new domains, new projects, new teams, the more you'll discover about yourself. Now, for me, in my personal life, I have never been in a full-time marketing role, but all the marketing, and but the thing is, I do need core marketing skills in my job. I do need to understand what it means to market a product, because being in product management, I need to understand that. But even as a BA, there would be requirements whereby we would talk about how do you market the product, what is the campaign, what is the plan, and so on and so forth. But for me to understand that, I needed to understand basic marketing skills. One way, yes, you can go to Udemy, you can pick up a course, you can take a course, and you can help it, get understanding around that. But on the other hand, there is a difference between what theory kind of tells you and what practically actually happens. So to bridge that gap, it wasn't something that I planned, but it just so happened that way, that when I was volunteering, my entire voluntary experience was in the marketing industry. So I used to do nonprofit marketing for pretty much like most of the charities that I worked with. So the knowledge that I gained today about marketing completely comes from my experience in the nonprofit voluntary world. And I tried out something different. I didn't go there and say, hey, I'm a technology person, so give me something related to technology, else I won't be interested. I actually said, that's okay, you need some help with marketing, I'm going to go in and try out things. So I tried out something different, and that has helped me today in my career, because now I have one additional facet that many other people might not have in the same position as me, because they chose to stay within the tech industry. And yes, their knowledge has probably deepened in the tech industry, and mine might be a bit more shallow compared to them. But I also have a wider skill set, which helps me to bring something else on the table compared to them, right? So I have built my own niche, I've built my own skill set, but that's me being self-aware of like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about this. I feel like my career has this gap. Let me go bridge that. And last but not the least, focus on the journey, not just the outcome. Goes back to what I mentioned about this presentation as well in the beginning. The outcomes are great. You can always identify what these outcomes are supposed to be. When you're reading a book today, it's really simple to go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, give me a summary of, the 7 habits that most successful people have." I think it's a very famous book, Highly Effective People. I think 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Go on ChatGPT and just type the statement and saying, "What are the 7 effective habits?" And you'll have the outcome. But is that what the core of the book is? Not necessarily. As you're reading through the pages, there are different aspects that the author is trying to convey to you. There are different aspects, examples that they're giving you, which helps you learn better and imbibe those values a bit more stronger than just reading a list of 7 things that the author is trying to portray to you. So even as you're going through the BA journey, don't worry too much about whether you failed in something and whether you were successful and so on and so forth. We'll talk a bit more about how to handle those successes and failures as well, but focus on the journey as well. What are the things that you are doing as a person to be more successful? What are the things that you're gaining in terms of your skill set to become that better person? Part of the journey is actually going to give you a lot of creativity. And the reason I'm able to stand here and speak to you about this topic is because I focused on the journey as well. I tried to understand what works best for me. I tried to understand, how do I explain this to somebody? If I'm interviewing and someone asks me in an interview, they ask me, "How were you successful in this specific role?" Am I able to explain myself? Am I able to convey myself? Am I able to tell them what happened? Because at the end of the day, in that interview, I'm not going to go in there and say that, "Hey, I managed to implement this product into production and therefore I was successful." Invariably, the interviewer will ask you, "How did you do it?" And if you're not able to explain that, then you've kind of lost your way somewhere there, because if you're not able to show your work, then potentially you may have copied the outcome from somewhere else. Or maybe you don't have the insight to think about all those different steps that need to be done to recreate that same success. It happened to be a fluke, right? Or it just happened to be a one-time thing. So that's the reason it's good to focus on the outcome. You do need a goal to get to, but don't forget the journey that you're taking along with it as well. So another analogy is, say you want to travel the world. For example, I was just speaking before this event started that I wanted to go to South Africa as well. I've never been there. That's my outcome. But when I'm there, I'm gonna enjoy every aspect of that journey, all the foods, all the different locations, all the sightseeing that I'm gonna do. That is what completes my entire trip, my journey, not just the fact that I have a stamp on my passport saying that I entered and exited South Africa, right? So that's what you need to think about as a BA as well. The next thing is out of the box, thinking out of the box. There are going to be new BA roles coming up every year, every decade. I'm sure the roles that your parents were more familiar with in their time perhaps don't exist today, and some of the roles that you are in today may not be obvious to you to the future. Maybe may not be there to the future generation. So there's going to be constant evolution of these roles, so keep a lookout for how these things change. For example, my major in university was in user experience design, human computer interaction, and my major was to focus on how do we actually design computers and how do we design some of the interactions that take place on the computer. UX UI is such a big buzzword today. Everyone talks about that. But when I graduated, no one knew about it. In fact, my parents were wondering, is this a viable career option that I'm going into? But simply because of the fact that there was an engineering term associated with my degree, they were like, "Okay, everyone knows engineering, so she'll figure it out." So there have been constant changes and evolution of the BA role. So be in touch with IIBA. Try to understand where the BABOK skills are coming from and look at what the market is changing into. Even if you're not looking for a job right now, go to job sites and try to find out what are the latest skill sets that people are looking for, right? That will give you a constant check in terms of understanding, do I have all the skill sets that I need to continue being a valuable addition to my company? Because it's not just the outside world, but even your company will have to pivot themselves to outward changes, right? Market changes and so on and so forth. So if you are continuously disconnected from what the market is showing, then you will slowly become an outdated asset. So you need to constantly keep looking for what's happening in the market, what is happening in terms of the evolution, and being connected to communities, the IIBA community and so on and so forth is actually quite valuable, because someone else might be doing that work for you and bringing you the information which you can then absorb. As I said, new domains to work with as well. Chat GPT has just risen in terms of its popularity, and AI is the new buzzword. So understanding what that means in your specific job, and how many domains has that opened up? What do people expect in terms of knowledge within that domain? New solutions for old problems. So if you have designed systems, you will know that we're constantly looking for solutions to track things. If someone tells you that now I'm tracking tasks for a team on paper, you will laugh at them because you're like, hey, at a basic level, you've got your Excel spreadsheet. Why are you writing this on paper? If you go to a company that says they don't even believe in cloud technology, you start questioning them these days, right? I actually had a client once who were completely tech averse. They were AI averse because they were dealing with a lot of sensitive client information. But working with that client became that much harder because they were not using cloud technology. They were using everything that was local. So everything had to be emailed through systems. There were version mismatches and things like that. But these are introduced problems. Like, these are problems of the old times. We don't have such problems anymore. But you have to understand that as time goes by, there are going to be new solutions for all these problems that we had before, and those problems either cease to exist or the problem themselves have morphed into something else. So you need to constantly keep thinking about, okay, what are the myths of my job? What are some of the common problems of my job? Talk to other people. This is where networking comes really handy. Have a coffee chat with people from different domains and just ask them, hey, what do you think is the biggest problem you're facing at your job? How do you think we can get around this problem? And having those communication channels going, you don't have to live through every problem that's out there, but being aware and knowing what that problem is, that makes you that much more competent in the industry. Because when someone comes to you and says, hey, I have this problem, you can be like, ah, yes, I did speak about this to someone else, and this is the solution that they followed. Do you think this will work for you? If that doesn't work, then start thinking out of the box again to come up with other solutions, and you can start testing, you can start playing around with prototypes and things like that. So being constantly aware of potential opportunities for you to improve your client's life, your customer's life, is really key here. Impacts of AI, we kind of talked about that already. A lot of things have become automated now. A lot of things that required human input does not really need human input anymore. So be aware of that in your BA role as well. It's not just about doing things in a hard way, but it's also working smart. A lot of the research work is now done through Chat GPT. Presentation outlines can be created through Chat GPT. Presentations can be created through that. Videos can be created through that. So the more easy you make your life, the more you can focus on a lot of other elements which make you human. I had actually given a talk about, how has AI kind of changed the world. And one of the takeaways as part of that conversation was that through AI, we have become more human. We are not necessarily just a machine that's doing repetitive work and pushing, paper through certain channels, but we have to start now becoming creative, because paper pushing can now be achieved by AI. So we need to now distance ourselves from being mechanical versus human, right? So AI in a way has made it difficult, but it's also helped us get in touch with our human qualities, which AI hasn't really imbibed yet. That's where we stand out, right? And jumping back to the second last point on this slide is new generations and personalities. I think as time goes by, we are having a bigger and bigger gap in terms of the types of generations that we're working with. There are people who are supposed to be retired by now, but because of financial obligations, or surely because of interest, because they don't want to lose that connection to the job that they did, they're coming back to work. So we see members who are like 70 plus coming back into the workforce to do consulting, to have some sort of interaction. They also tend to be investors because they've got good amount of money from their career. They might be investors that you're speaking to. And on the other end, we've got kids who are entering the workforce much more sooner. These days, people are preparing for university by the time they are 10 or 11. They're taking like advanced math courses, advanced science courses. They're coming into internship. Corporates are trying to attract them as well. They have like bring your kids to work programs, and they have like mini kids days and so on and so forth. So when you think of yourself as a BA and you're thinking of yourself as someone who needs to manage these stakeholders, It's not just enough to speak to the stakeholders that you're dealing with, but you might have users who are spanning anywhere from like a 15-year-old to a 75-year-old. Think about all the generations in there: baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, all the different characteristics that they have, their communication styles, their tech savviness, their ability to process information, their needs to be involved. How do they need to be involved? The empathy that's involved in there. Massive gap there, right? So I feel like as BAs, you need to really step up to the challenge and start thinking out of the box. And how do I communicate to all of them in a balanced way? How do I not make too much work for myself, but make sure that all of them are informed? I used to work on a project once where, one of the stakeholders that I worked with exclusively loved talking over the telephone. She did not like Teams chat. She did not like being on camera. She did not like turning on, any kind of video calling. And she used to call me over the phone. And I'm from a generation when I was young, I used to pick up the phone and stuff. But as we pass towards the tech side of things and being in technology, I had started getting used to more of the online channels of communication. So when the phone rang, I literally jumped on my seat because I was like, who uses this anymore, right? I thought it was more of an accessory that's just sitting there. Or it used to be, external callers who used to call on my desk phone. So it was very interesting to manage that kind of communication from someone who solely prefers using the telephone versus the rest of the company was all online, right? But you had to manage that interaction as well. So understanding how you need to, present yourself and work through these situations and be relevant, regardless of the situation that you're put in, makes it that much more important. People, people, people. I cannot stress this anymore. One thing that I would probably give myself as an advice if I was back in university and someone asked me what advice would I give them, I would say that focus a bit more on the people side of things. It is very, very natural when you graduate from school, you are so proud of the work that you've done, which you should be. It is a lot of effort to get through schooling systems and complete your degree and so on and so forth. But we are so proud about the knowledge that we have just gained that we think that technical skills are everything, which I don't deny. You do need to have when you're young. You don't necessarily know how to move with everyone out there. You don't necessarily have the people skills. So the only thing that you can bank on is technical skills. So I completely understand that. But do as much as possible when it comes to the people side of things. Connect with as many people as you can. This, in my opinion, is the toughest part of any job because technical skills, you can always learn them through Udemy. Go to school and finish a boot camp. You can talk to someone, you can read a book. There are a million ways you can gain technical skills. And even to apply those skills, there are plenty of opportunities for you to find ways to apply those skills, sharpen those skills as well. But the people side of things, you can't necessarily practice because no one is going to have a practice relationship with you. They're all going to have genuine relationships and connections with you, right? So learning that skill set is one of the biggest things that I missed when I was younger, and I somehow feel the effects of that here and there. But if you are still early on in your career or in your mid career, wherever you are, it's never too late to start. I've been doing better for myself, so I would highly encourage for you as well to look for those opportunities to sharpen your people skills as well. In terms of networking, my personal opinion is that there are three dimensions of networking. Some of them are much more obvious to us. Obviously, lateral networking, we do happen to do that quite often. We meet with our peers, we talk to them, we make sure we have a good relationship with them. So all that is good. The other one that we focus on is upwards, which means that if you know someone is in a place of power, someone who has influence, such as your manager, such as your manager's managers, the VPs, the AVPs, if you get opportunities to connect with them, it's obvious for us because we're like, yeah, these people will give me jobs or they will promote me. So it makes a lot of sense for you to connect with them and make sure that you are in a good working relationship. The last one, which people tend to miss quite a bit, is networking downwards, which is, people not at your level, but, people who are reporting to you or people who are new to the industry. When you move into a leadership position, you need to have your own SWAT team. You need to have your own set of people that you can rely on, who you can give work, who you can be like, yes, if I'm a leader, I can hire this person and I can trust that this person will get the job done for me, right? So you need to make sure that all three dimensions are covered. And as time goes by, one of the ways you can invest in the generation that's coming after you is through networking, it's through mentoring, it's through coaching, helping people come and enter the domain as well. So these are the folks who are going to be, a few steps behind you, but they're catching up, right? So these would be the people who would be helpful. Once you move to a leadership position, you will have a team that you can trust and work with. Um, the next 2 points about cheerleaders, it's not just about who you know, but it's also about who knows you. When you are not in the room, is someone actually being your cheerleader? Is someone able to speak on your behalf? Is someone able to vouch for you? Is someone able to promote you? How do you build these cheerleaders, right? You need to have these genuine relationships with them and you need to show them that you are able to achieve things. And when you do that, these people will start building trust on you. And then when time comes to promote somebody or when time comes to speak for someone, they will be able to vouch for you. And similarly, you should also do the same thing. Be cheerleaders for other people. If you see certain people who have good talent, speak up for them. And that way, the surrounding and the environment that you build is going to be made of people who are talented, who are good, and who deserve that position. Rather than if you keep quiet, someone else is going to pass on people that they think are good. They may or may not be, and this is where we run into cases where a lot of people who are not necessarily designed for the job or do not deserve the job get pushed up, right? Simply because the person who was cheerleading for them had the loudest voice in the room. So making sure that you are able to build cheerleaders for yourself and also be a person who is promoting people who are, worth it. They deserve that position will help you build that environment as a whole. And last but not the least, we all think that outcomes depend on the work that we do and how we deliver it. But in fact, the truth is, outcomes depend on people. If you are trying to convince someone to do something and they say no, then that outcome is not going to be achieved for you, right? If you are trying someone to, negotiate with them and saying that, hey, I think this is the right direction, and they reject you, then there ends your outcome, right? So more than the work obviously needs to be done because you need to have something to show, that goes without saying, but that defining factor at the end of that whole process and journey can be changed. The direction can be changed very quickly simply if the person who needs to say yay or nay doesn't agree with you. So the importance of people relationships is so crucial here that you need to understand who are the key players. It doesn't mean you suck up to them or anything like that, but it's always useful to have people who support you. Keep them on your side. You know how they say, like, keep friends close, near, but keep your enemies even closer. So knowing these people well, and making sure that they are in tune with what's actually happening. You are working towards the greater benefit of the company, and they need to know that you are in their court as well. You're not going against them. So understanding what drives each person, understanding what they are passionate about, understanding how their bonus is even built out, right? Even that can be a minute difference that will help you win the deal, because you might be like, oh, this component needs to be sold for this person to get bonus. So if I talk to them with this angle and this perspective, they will accept because this impacts their bonus, right? Just having those minute pieces of information can make a major difference for you. So people is very important. Um, I'll do a quick check on time. Oh, we've got 3 more minutes. Let me just, I've got a couple points for bonus. Two other takeaways that I want to mention is fail fast and build your brand. This is more on a personal level, when you're trying to build yourself up as well. So failing fast, this is something I wanted to cover, is obviously we all say learn from failure. It's not that you failed, but the specific project that you're working on or the specific attempt that you did failed. So try to understand why you failed, right? That's the biggest learning you can take away from that. On the flip side, if you did win and succeed in something, don't just gloat in the success. I mean, enjoy it, but at the same time, come back and kind of understand what were the lucky factors that just took you through, right? There's always a certain sense of coordination, like, oh, because A happened this way, B happened this way, C happened this way, and XYZ, all of them lined up. This is the reason why this was successful. Having that understanding is also going to help you recreate that scenario next time, right? These are the risks that were there, but they actually didn't happen. But all these things fell in line, and therefore I was successful. Have multiple plans. It's always good to have plan A, plan B, plan C, all the way to plan Z, right? And that's not to say that you're pessimistic, that's just you being extremely practical. If one doesn't work, you need to have the nimbleness and the agility to move to the next thing. You can be stuck up on that same point and thinking that, oh, I failed here, now what? Right? You always need to have multiple options. That's why knowing yourself is so important, because if skill number one doesn't work out, let's tap into skill number two. Two doesn't work out, let's tap into skill number three. All this kind of ties in together. And then the second thing, or the last thing that I wanted to leave you with, is building your personal brand. 10, 20 years ago, this might not have been a big thing. But now, with the prevalence of social media, with the prevalence of LinkedIn, Facebook, and all these other platforms that people have, social media, unfortunately, has become a yardstick. It shouldn't be, but it is. And be in Rome as Romans do, right? So we just have to align ourselves towards that. You don't have to be an extremely social media savvy person, but make sure that for someone who does show interest in you, if they want to go to your page and look at who you are as a person, they are able to find out who you are as a person, right? It is also a way to manifest. If you understand a lot of the algorithms that take place on social media today, back in the day, if you tell people, hey, I'm interested in so and so, and if that person remembers that you do, and they'll connect you to somebody that they know. But today, with the algorithms, if you put hashtags and you say hashtag business analysis, hashtag tech BA, hashtag ITBA, or whatnot, you know that the search algorithm will start showing you things aligned to what you have kind of put on your social media posts as well. So in a way, it has created a way for you to manifest these things through online channels. It helps you combine your focus, because when you're thinking about your online brand, you will constantly be thinking about, okay, does this come across in the right way? Does this come across in the right way? What am I actually focusing on? Constantly and ruthlessly, chipping away at all the unnecessary pieces, you will be able to define yourself in the right way. And this is not something that's easy. Let me also put it out there. For me, I've been in the industry for about 18 years now, but I think formally to think about what actually interested me and what I actually wanted to work, it only really dawned on me maybe about 3, 4 years ago. So it doesn't mean that people have worked this out in any way. But as you constantly focus on that, a path will come out. It's something will, light at the end of the tunnel will show up. Something will carve itself out the more you focus on it. And this is going to help you be ever ready for an opportunity. If you have heard about the 30-second elevator pitch, imagine you get into the elevator and suddenly the CEO of the company gets into the elevator with you and they ask you who you are and what you do. Here's your chance to promote yourself, right? And potentially if the CEO likes your pitch, he might even give you an important project and something that's highly visible. So being ever ready for that sort of a mindset is also very important, because you never know where the next opportunity is gonna knock your doors. And with that, I think I wrapped up all my thoughts. So let me stop sharing and maybe we can jump into Q&A.
Thank you so much, Banu. That was brilliant and a very impactful presentation. I would say key takeaways for me are the strategies for career advancement, importance of continuous learning. And I really enjoyed the practical tips for navigating challenges in the BO as you well presented and highlighted. And we also appreciate your real-world examples and actionable advices. So I will jump into the Q&A. I have a lot of them coming in. I think on a light note, somebody I think Masentile is saying you would love South Africa for sure. So we're expecting you in South Africa as soon as possible.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. A quick question from Lalita. She posted a question that read does, how would you go about
Hi,
proposing?
hi,
Oh,
Banu.
Lalita. Yeah, please
Hey.
come through.
This was very informative. I think we could have gone a lot more questions. So there's some questions in the chat. Posing a new type of BA role in your company.
Yeah. So I've actually done this quite a number of times. I think this happens quite often in consulting space as well, whereby you want the client to kind of give you more money, right? So we have gone about identifying different types of roles, but BA specifically, I think what you need to do is identifying the gap between the roles and why you want this person to come in. Often this is like the running joke back in the day with BAs, right? If someone is instrumental in getting things done, but no one really knows what their role is, but somehow they're getting things done, let's hire them and call them a BA, right? So with
Yeah.
with that joke in mind, I think the key thing would be to identify what the gap is. So if you feel that there's a developer and there's the business team and there's no one, like a developer is not necessarily required to translate these requirements, but at the same time, a business team doesn't necessarily know the technical piece in depth. Identifying what is it that they need to do in the middle, number one, that would be the first thing that I would look into. Second thing is give them at least a 3 month to 6 month plan on what this person is going to be working on. So if you know that there's a project coming up and you know that, hey, we need to clear out our past requirements, we need to build system documentation, we need use case studies and use case flows, we need some business case documents, we need someone to research this part, we need to connect with another team. I mean, a BA does so many different things, right? And if you're able to identify what they will be doing, at least for the 3 months to 6 month plan, I think for a business team or a leader who is trying to build out a team, they will get an idea of, okay, this is worth 40 hours a week. I can see this happening. And once at the end of 6 months, you'll start seeing that the role itself has evolved. Or maybe there was no reason to keep the role in either way, whichever way the direction goes. I think those would be my two main go-tos in terms of how do you propose a new role to be added.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very actually insightful. There's two questions here that follow similar lines. So the first one is, what is your advice for people wanting to become a BA? And two scenarios. A final year BA student wants to become a BA, and scenario two, working in a different position, but I want to move into a BA role. And then there's additional question that I think fits right in with this is, how do I gain experience for an entry-level BA role, currently going through a career change, a career pivot with a background in IT software development with 3 years hands-on experience?
Okay. Now there are two different roles. So definitely, if you want to become a BA, I would highly encourage, have coffee chats with people who are currently in your position. Go on LinkedIn, look for people who have the titles that you are interested in and ask them if they're interested to have a coffee chat with you, and be as explicit as possible in terms of, hey, what are the skill sets you have? How did you build them? How did you get here? What was your pitch? How did you get into the company? What was your path to apply and get in, right? The more we don't have to idolize anyone, but if we can learn from someone else's wisdom in terms of how they achieve something, that should eliminate a lot of the challenges that you face day to day. You don't have to do everything alone. I mean, at the end of the day, each human being has a life expectancy of 70 to 80 years. We cannot go through every possible challenge out there ourselves. So a person who is smart learns from their mistakes, but a wise person learns from other people's mistakes. That's like one of my favorite quotes. It also ties into the fact that it encourages me talking all the time. So you should definitely reach out to people, have coffee chats with them, and find out exactly how they did something. So identify people who have gone through the same career ladder as you. So for someone who is a final BA student, you know there have been other people who graduated from your university. Use that as your common platform. Reach out to them and ask them, hey, I saw that you graduated from the same university. I'm also noticing that you have taken the same career path as me. Would you be willing to talk to me, right? Talk to them, number one. Number two, going back to my self-awareness piece, look at the skill set that the Babok is talking about, and look at how you fare in terms of those skill sets. Where are you a 1? Where are you a 5? Like, your skill is top notch, right? You need to think about that and assess yourself. The people side of skills, you can actually get them from different sources. You don't have to be a BA to get the people skills. Personally, I found that sales jobs, I'm not very good at those jobs. So both, or at least three of my summer jobs were all sales jobs. And while I was average, I met with average success, I also learned a lot of things. How do you negotiate? How do you think about all the different ways that the other person will reject the sale? How do you come up with that exception handling concept, right? So the people skill sides, if you feel that you're lacking in some way, find creative ways to branch that out. Be a receptionist, be a call center person, be a salesperson. All these scenarios puts you in the hot seat because people come to you with various types of questions with different levels of intensity of emotions. How do you handle all that? That really gives you insight into dealing, with really serious situations, right? So that's number one. um the other thing is, I would say for someone who's just graduating, find a lot of volunteer opportunities. If you still feel like you're not able to crack through the job market, my personal journey, I always recommend people to look into volunteering because of two things. One, you're able to give back to the community, which says a lot about you as a person. You become an interesting personality to a lot of companies, because they're like, this is not just a person who's doing things for money, but they have a core passion inside. They are a human inside, right? So it has definitely led to a lot of interesting conversations for me. So personally, I'm a big advocate of volunteering. You can also do a lot of online volunteering. Recently, I found out that United Nations has an online volunteering portal. You can definitely go into that and look for some jobs where you need to brush up some skills on documentation, on writing, on translation. All these things I think are superb ways of giving back. Number two, use social media. You don't have to wait until a project lands on your lap. You can create your own project. I'm sure in your 20, 25 years of life, you must have run into an issue where you were like, I wish there was a solution for this, right? If you were the BA for the project to build that solution, how would you go about doing it? Write your own requirements document, build your own user case studies, build your own use cases, build your own business cases, and try to promote that on LinkedIn and show people that, hey, this is my style of writing. This is how I approach it. This is how I researched. Make it into your own pet project and kind of promote yourself there, right? Um, and last but not the least, go for some of the courses like Udemy and things like that. Those are actually great ways to build and bridge some of the gaps between formal education and workplace education. Most of these Udemy courses are built by people who have been in the workplace. They understand some of those gaps, and they try to build the courses around that. So I would definitely recommend going through that option as well. So that's for someone who has just graduated from university. I would say those would be my top three. For someone who is shifting or doing a career pivot, you come in with a set of experience already. So take a skill list or a check of all the things that you already know, especially people coming from development background. You already have an upper hand in becoming a tech BA. You already have an upper hand in being an IT BA. You already have an upper hand in being an analytics or someone who needs to build BI or Power BI and things like that. Ask your company if you're able to have some sort of secondment and saying, hey, I am interested in being a BA. I can take some additional responsibilities with no impacts on my pay, but are you okay with me exploring this avenue as well? I'm sure a lot of companies will support you in terms of your performance management and your career path as well. So definitely look into that, but make sure that the skill sets that you're offering, you have done a good analysis of what you can and cannot do. And the rest of the three aspects that I mentioned for newcomers, I would recommend for you as well, because even for mid-career or late career professionals, pivoting is challenging because most people will start boxing you into the area that you were in before. But it is up to you to kind of show them that you've got other skills. And the only way you can kind of push yourself to get to that is by showing all these alternative ways of expressing yourself. You can even work with other BAs as junior BAs as an additional role in saying that, hey, can I help you with this document? Can I just work on this section? And that will give you insight into what it means to be a BA. And then from there, you can make a decision on whether that was a worthwhile role for you to switch into or not.
Thank you, Banu. Sure, yeah, that's quite a lot to digest. Very valuable. Thank you for that. Let's see, we've got about 3 minutes left.
Yep.
There's a question here. how can BAs effectively position themselves for leadership roles within their organization? And I think that ties in with the next one, the common mistakes that BAs make when they're trying to grow these careers and they're aiming for that leadership role. What can be avoided there? Maybe if
Yeah.
one can combine the answer to that, that'll be great.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I have observed when it comes to promotions and leadership roles is that most often people assume that if someone is really good at hands-on tasks, they would be good in leadership roles as well. It's a very massive myth. People assume that technical expertise equals leadership. They're not the same thing. So often when you have extremely good developers, they've been performing really well and they get promoted into technical roles where they have to manage people's emotions, paychecks, and performance and things like that. They start sucking at it. Not because they're a bad leader or anything like that, but they were measured on the wrong thing, right? There's a quote, I think it was by Einstein, where he said, you know, if you measure the capability of a fish by the ability to fly, it's always going to fail, right? So when you're looking at leadership, you need to look at a different set of skills versus when you are looking at someone who's an individual contributor, whether that be a developer, a BA, or so on and so forth. So in terms of BAs themselves, I think they're in a very good position to start moving into the leadership side because they are really good at building relationships. However, one of the things that you need to understand when you're moving into a leadership role is whenever you are providing documents or status updates, you can't just think about your own immediate manager, but you need to think about a manager 2 steps away from you. When you start making life easier for your manager, they start realizing that you've got the leadership skill set. Because if you can anticipate the needs of your manager, it means that you're able to think about what leadership actually requires. What is the viewpoint that they need? Do they really just need the itty bitty, status updates of every sprint ticket, every user story that's going in? Or do they need the burn down chart? Or do they need to know what the obstacles are? Understanding what it means to be a leader in your organization is probably the biggest gap that a lot of people don't have because they think that, oh, my manager was super happy, but he did not promote me, right? So it's not about keeping just your manager happy, but it's also thinking about the manager one more level above, because eventually you need to make that guy's life happy, right? It's not just immediately your manager, but the one after. So thinking like a manager, and whenever you're communicating, being like one, acting like one, right? As part of the acting piece, there was one thing that someone told me, and it was like a eureka moment for me, where they said, if you want to be a manager, dress like one, right? The more you show your visibility around the organization and showing that you are dressed like one, and that means like proper formal, so whatever the etiquette is in your company in terms of showing that you are a leader, in terms of taking up new challenges and opportunity. If someone comes and tells you, oh, we need to coordinate this with another team, and suddenly you're like, I'm a BA, I don't do that job. And if you take your hands away, instead, if you say, okay, let me actually go and talk to them, now you're slowly building those networks and you're building those connections, where tomorrow, if you go into a meeting room and someone says, oh, we have the decision to promote somebody A or B, and I know that A has been making a lot of connections with other teams as well. She has been taking up a lot more jobs, just to been taking a lot more tasks that is beyond her. Her status updates are impeccable. She really understands what the leadership wants, versus B, who's an excellent BA, and does the BA role really well. Who do you think am I going to pick? I'm going to pick the person who has now built their network, because now it's not just their manager that's speaking about them, but all the other teams that she has worked with, they're all speaking well about her. So do you want, whether we like it or not, leadership goes hand in hand with a little bit with popularity as well, not necessarily high school cheerleader popularity, but to some extent, people need to know and trust you as a person, as someone who is able to get things done. So that is what I would say. As a BA, we need to start thinking outside the box as well, because as a BA, we tend to get very siloed within our own department, our own document, and what we need to focus on. But the more you start opening up your mind in terms of understanding financials, how do you run your team? What kind of status updates does this person want? Where is the product going in terms of its long-term definition and long-term goal? What keeps the CEO up at night? How do I better improve my department? Am I looking at some of the process improvement activities? All those things really show that you're thinking beyond what your job entails and you're thinking as a leader. And the more you can promote yourself and connect with other people, I think that will really set you up for success in terms of getting promoted to the next one. And I think on the flip side, those are some of the common mistakes. I wouldn't really call it a common mistake per se, but I do think that people have different tendencies. Some might actually like the work that they're doing in the hands-on role, and that's completely fine. But if you are looking to get into a leadership role and you want to get to that point, you will have to open up your horizon a bit more and not just stay within the silo. And that's one of the things that we need to think about when you're growing your career too. What does it mean to grow? Are you, when you think about the T, are you looking to broaden your horizons, or are you looking to go into more depth? And for each one of them, the strategy is slightly different. But for leadership, obviously, you need to broaden your depth. But if you're happy as an individual contributor, you can keep going down into the silo and make the right kind of relationships based on that.
Thank you, Banu. That gives us quite a lot to digest and think about, and I'm really grateful for that answer. I think it also covered some of our other questions that we had in the chat. But yeah, team, if there's anything else that we want to add, you know where to get a hold of Banu. We've got her details. She's very active on LinkedIn. Banu, I'm sure they can share
Yes.
information with you. We'll publish this on our YouTube channel as well, so you can listen to all that lovely feedback. And thank you so much for being with us this evening. Really helpful, and I think it's always good to just get that boost in our careers and motivate us a little bit more to move on to that next step and do the leap of faith, So great having you. We really enjoyed that. Thanks from every one of us.
Likewise. Thanks for being a wonderful audience. You were very patiently waiting for 45 minutes to get your questions in. But as Chrisanne said, please feel free to, get connected with me over LinkedIn. And as they said, I'll be sharing my materials and my contact on LinkedIn as well. If there